biblical masculinity has to do something born with, you've been given it, operating it. From cultural, it's something that you could just put on.
Because some guys feel like to be the man, they have to be superior.
Yeah.
Right? There's a difference between being a leader and being superior. I do believe if a woman is pushed enough to do something that a man should do, she will get it done.
I want to talk about some cultural expectations of men and how do they align or conflict with Christian values today. So, cultural expectations of who we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to do, does that align or conflict with our Christian principles that we're taught?
It's hard.
It definitely conflicts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So?
I mean, yeah, it definitely conflicts. From what I'm seeing, the world's in a really odd place right now, I feel like.
It's weird.
And I'll be really honest though. What I see on the internet is what I see is not what I see in real life. So that's where I say it's weird because now the internet is a huge piece of our lives. We scroll and we see so many different people living so many different types of lives. But let's say in music, I'm a writer, I'm a songwriter, and for let's say hip hop, what is lauded and being pushed right now is the gangster, okay? And this is talking about guns, having sex with multiple women, not wifing any of them, being more gangster than you, not snitching, all that stuff, right? That's being pushed, and that's what we're hearing a lot of just in that realm of music specifically. That's why I say, we're kind of in pockets, but...
Yeah.
So pockets, I'd say.
Yeah, but I do think we all are aware of those pockets, and if we do see someone that looks a certain way, or they say they do this and that, maybe in the music, we might think. I think some people think like, oh, I think even young people that can't see through certain things, like you were talking about, like the true essence and a character of a person. It's hard to see through when they have a gun on their waist and they're dressing a certain way, or they might be big and strong in the gym, but you talk to them and you're like, oh man, this
The teddy bear.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it conflicts. So the reason I have to say it conflicts is because what I'm seeing right now is that a over-heightened idea of masculinity, where a guy has to be this super tough, strong guy that and I think these barriers are kind of being broken down, but I think there's so many rounds to it. But I think that I think that it's conflicting in a way where you have to be quick to jump sometimes. If you're not being raised by, righteous people, I had a great father that, was like, hey, what are you doing getting mad? But in some people, they're like, oh yeah, use that. If somebody punches you, punch them back. Start swinging. You know what I mean? Don't let nobody disrespect you. All that stuff where we're taught to turn the other cheek. Yeah. That's some of the ways I think it's conflicting.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a heightened, the masculinity is heightened in a way to think that there could be no feminine side to it at all. Right? You can't cry, right? You can't joke. Maybe you got to be really stoic, and there's times for that, sometimes you have to be arch, you have to be stoic, you have to be serious, but it almost becomes like a mask that you put on. You're like, okay, this is what I'm going to show people in this event, at church, wherever, even in friend groups,
Yeah.
And then there's other men, it's like you get what you see, right? Yeah. I'm the same person, that you see, in my house, out of my house, at church, whatever. And I feel like this heightened masculinity is really getting people to put on masks that really shouldn't fit them or doesn't fit them.
For sure.
And
or destructive.
Yeah, in a way,
No.
I mean, if you really look at today's and, I'm not gonna mention any names, but we scroll and we see people who are the face of what masculinity looks like, and then when you look at what they do in the biblical perspective, it's like these are probably not the people you really want to follow. After let me if I'm a boy and I'm growing up and I'm like, who's gonna be my role model? Well, it's not my dad because he's a bad example. And you're like, okay, let me scroll, and I'm seeing, this guy seems like he has it all together. He has a lot of money. He has a lot of women sometimes,
Yeah, right.
He has all these things that I want because, we're boys, we want a little bit of everything, even if it's not good for us. And we put on that same mask, we put on that identity that we're viewing, and it becomes a fake identity or a fake masculinity.
Yeah.
Do these cultural expectations help the work, family, and spiritual balance or disrupt it? So the cultural expectations of like maybe having a lot of money, all these things, does it help the balance that as godly men we should have the spiritual, the family, work balance in that order, spiritual, family, and then work? In my opinion, that's how I think it should go. Does the expectations that the cultural has for us help us in that balance, or does it kind of disrupt it and make it hard for us?
I think the expectations of the culture are, I guess right now, if I were to take a general consensus, I would still say it's let's say America, right? I'll still say it's relatively 50-50. When I really talk to people and I really talk to because interestingly enough, I think females dictate the culture. And when I really talk to most women, like I was talking to some girls today, it was actually funny at my work. And I asked them, I said, how do you feel about a man that has no money? Right? I literally just said, how do you feel about a man that has no money? And she was like, one of the girls was like, is he my man? Is he my man? And I was like, oh, no, just a man that has no money. She was like, oh, well, like everybody has their things in life. And then like another girl was like, see ya, right? And I think, I'll put it this way. I think that the cultural expectations are, and I started talking to them more, and they were like, I'd be fine. She's like, I want to homeschool my kid, but like, if I find a man that makes like, I said, what's the minimum amount of man that has to make a year for him to be like suitable for you? She was like, so they both said like 80,000, right? And I was like, what's the max? They're like to infinity, right?
I bet.
Yeah, of course.
So the minimum is 80,000 a year.
Minimum is 80.
Dang, I did not make that my first job.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Get some high standards.
Yeah, I'm like, golly.
But I was like, okay, well, then as another thing, the to infinity, I'd be like, I don't know if you want a man to have as much money as he wants, because they might not be as great as you would think. But the cultural expectations are like, we both work. I think that's one of the big cultural expectations now. Both the woman and the husband are going to be working in this household, right? And I think that's the biggest. Yeah, and I think that's the biggest one in terms of masculinity, what they expect. But they expect to both work, but then for the man to be still 100% masculine and almost also 100% feminine too, which I see too, like to be able to like be this all-encompassing, like, if we're too focused on work, sometimes I feel like it's, I want you to be more like here and with me.
Yeah.
But then when I'm here and with you, like in the back of their mind, she might be thinking like, why didn't you pick up that shift tonight? Right?
Yeah.
Like I definitely experienced that. So it's like, that's one of the expectations that I feel like it's like tough to balance. And I think overall, the main one where like, say if I'm going to start a family or be with my wife, we're both expected to work. I think that disrupts the three things that you said, like the
Work,
spiritual, family, and work.
Yeah.
I think that's a disruption.
Yeah.
I feel like it depends a lot on the person though too, right? Because if you have like, it depends where your heart is. Like if you're going back to the masculine, right? If your heart's towards money, you're gonna go for money first, right? If it's towards God, it's gonna go for God, and everything else is going to fall under that.
Well, here's the thing, right? Is that the tough thing is that in the Bible, we get a clear depiction that, like, man being responsible to take care of his woman, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, God, I'm trying to go after you, but taxes just hit. And I'm a little stressed right now because I know I'm supposed to be talking to you, hearing you, reading your word, but I may have to pick that extra shift to take care of your daughter, And so it's hard because, like, I didn't get it until, like, it's like this. I'll tell a little story, right? Yeah. I'll make it quick. I used to, when I was back in high school, where I had endless amount of time, endless amount of freedom.
Yep.
I go and I worked out heavily, and I loved to do it. It was fun. And then it came with opposition when I started to grow up and I had more and more responsibilities to do. That thing that I loved doing became much harder to do, right? And I hear it a lot of times, like people who grow a new relationship with Jesus in their high school, middle school time. They're like, man, this time was so great. No responsibilities, and I got to spend time with Jesus all the way. But when responsibilities came up, it's like times was tough. And it's no excuse not to spend time with God. But it's like it's like a tug of war, and you have work tugging at you. You have spirituality tugging at you. You got family matters tugging at you. And you're like trying to withstand all of it. It's like you're balancing 3 plates, on your head, making sure they don't fall. And, that's the hard thing, right? Is that being a spiritual leader is spending time with God, but also providing for your family. Yeah. And let's be honest, in the state of where America is, it makes it really hard to have a lot of time for other things. And that might be God, but it's no excuse. But it becomes harder, that
I feel like as I've made more money, it's become a lot more difficult to keep that balance as far as, being relational, following your own passions or hobbies. And sometimes even, I'm married, sometimes even being a good husband, where it's like, I want to spend more time with you, but at the same time, I got to put those hours in, to pay these bills and to support the life that we currently have as well. But sometimes I wonder if it's one of those things where maybe I'm not doing a good job as far as maintaining that balance, where maybe I'm too focused on money at the same time, where I could, buy all these colognes and go to these trips and different.
Smell good. I smell you from here.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where I was reading this book you let me borrow called Margin. Marcus let me borrow. I still haven't given it back yet. I plan to. Yeah, no, I'm going to give it back soon.
Yeah, we'll put it in the link below for y'all.
Yeah.
Changed my life.
Yeah. But it's talking about how as people, like, especially in this American lifestyle, we become too enamored with our lifestyle and what we think the ideal lifestyle is, because especially in this age of social media, we're constantly comparing ourselves to people who we don't need to necessarily compare ourselves to. So we become so focused on, like, making a certain amount of money to do all these things where we don't really need all those things. Like, a lot of times you can live a more simple lifestyle that at the same time we fulfill our duties as a man, and we fulfill our duties as Christians as far as spending time with God, and we do better with the relationship aspect. And it's one of those things where it's like, do we sometimes get so caught up on the idea of, making that minimum $80K per year for women interested in you, and you end up, like, losing focus on the other things. So,
and they'll say that in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then be like, whoa, you're not spending time with me. You want this $80K, right?
Yeah.
I gotta get.
Yeah.
I gotta get to work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think.
And I definitely lean towards the side of a man. Especially if you have a wife, and especially, like, I'm in the process of getting closer to being ready to get married sooner or later. But in the process of getting closer, no. But I want to have a clear conversation where if we have to work our butts off to, even if it's just do something like pay for an apartment for X amount of time, or if I have to, that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
Now, I do think we lose a lot of time. And I think that's like the biggest thing right now is that like when it comes to like workload, let's say, right? I'll say I lean towards the side if a man has to work, he just has to work, period. Now, if the man has to work and we're doing all this silly stuff on the side, right? Like,
there's no excuse.
Yeah. Like I can't be like, well, babe, I got to pick up this shift. And then she's like, but you just hung out with the boys last night. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, oh, so you can't make time for me?
I play video games for like 3 hours.
Exactly. Yeah. Or things that like really, or things that really don't matter. You know what I mean? Or why did you spend 3 hours in the gym today, Bluetooth? Like, it's like, yeah, I probably could have cut that down. You're right. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I get it. Yeah.
So I do think there's like, or like, even like, it's like little stuff like on the toilet for 10 minutes. What am I doing? Scrolling?
Exactly.
You were done 5 minutes ago, low key. You know, so those little times I do think, so we have to be careful. I don't want to preach a message of like, work, man, work. Yeah. But then someone takes it to where like, oh yeah, I'm just going to put work over everything if I have to work. Yeah. When you're putting other little things or selfish things or lack of preparation, right? And it's causing you to even overwork.
It's really rare for somebody to be so tied up where they can't spend time with you.
Especially, It's
really rare.
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest with myself, like, I'll miss, like, the mark on a few things. I'll be like, man, I could have easily solved the problem if I just would have managed my time better and took away the fluff. You know, take away the fluff. The things, the 10 minutes on the toilet scrolling. Yeah. Sometimes it's 20 minutes for some people. Yeah. Watching TV, you know, or, you know, playing the video game or things like that. Or sometimes it's just, you know, going out with the boys and you're like, man, I need to do what I need to do.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I think I got overworked and burnt out in a season because I was, one, working a lot, but on the other side of it, I was also playing a lot too. You know, and I'm making these excuses. Oh my gosh, I'm so busy. I don't have enough time for these things. But I was like burning the candles from both ends, one being work and the other being playing. Yeah. And, you know, the work hard, play hard doesn't really fit.
Something's got to... It doesn't fit family for sure.
Yeah. No, you work hard and...
Unless you're playing outside with your kids.
Yeah. Yeah. So... Yeah. So how about the... like, let's talk about the... expectations and the pressure a little bit for us men to maybe have it all together, to that financial, you know, to be able to provide that for our families. I want to talk about that a little bit because that is expected of us. I think culturally, maybe it's heightened on the cultural basis as far as financially. But biblically as well, we're supposed to provide, protect, and be the priest. And do all these things. But there was a kind of pressure, you know, especially for young men, right? Yeah. Like, it's like a constant weight. And I want to talk about it and, you know, what it is and how do we get through it? How do we carry it?
All right, let's talk about it. All right. I'm 24 years old, right? I still live with my mother. Boom. Drop the mic. How does that make you feel? Right? Now, there's plenty of us that are still doing this. Right? Yeah. I'm not the only one. Oh my gosh, right? But God forbid you get to 30 and you're still living with your mom, right? I think it's tough because you feel a pressure that's not just societal. It's definitely within yourself. Yeah. To like, you feel like, oh man, like, because in light of the work thing, I think, man, okay, I could really work my tail off and and pay for a $1,700 apartment in Nova and like not have time for much of anything else but work and like sleep and maybe the gym. I really could do that. But then I'll be honest. I think, do I want to live that way? like I'm like, and truly, right? And I don't want to be I hate to be the dreamer guy or the person that's like, I'm working on something. I think a lot of young men, we want to get out of, say, mom's basement, metaphor.
Yeah.
Wherever, if we're not living, and mom's basement is a metaphor for we are not living solely by our own means.
Yeah.
Right? I think we all want to do that. I think a lot of things plague our minds. If it be bad habits, I don't think it's all the economy or things like that. I do think the economy, especially where we live, has a huge part to play with it. It's I would say it's very tough for someone that's not making a certain amount of money that comes after years of work and maybe even a corporate job to live by yourself, quote unquote, comfortably.
Yeah.
But we attack the idea of comfortably in margin, right? Am I willing to cut off Crunchyroll? Come on, am I willing to cut off Crunchyroll, Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max? I was thinking about this the other day. Why do I have three? Why am I paying for 3 streaming services?
I have like
I got more than that.
Yeah, exactly. But why? Like that's now.
Is Netflix not enough?
Exactly.
Crunchyroll's enough for me.
You know, there's nothing that says by this age you have to leave your mother's house, right? But I do think societally in America we've kind of been told that, oh, if you're, after the college age and you're still living at home, you're kind of a failure, or, and even I think there's something with like, if you're trying to talk to young ladies at this age, there's a stigma like, oh,
where do you live?
Where do you live? Do you live with your mom? Yeah, if you say your mom,
they give you a side eye.
Yeah, but they're living with their mom too. What? But check this. We're the guy. We're supposed to have
it all together.
Yeah.
So I'll stop my rant, but there's a lot of nuances to it.
No, it just definitely comes into that because it's like I feel like we have all different age ranges represented on this podcast because I happen to be 31. And
dude,
he's old. He's old.
With the earring on, looking good, man.
He's gonna keep those earrings.
Yeah,
he's gonna be 50.
That
great
look dope, bro. I love him.
He's gonna keep them in.
Yo, so exercise and protein shakes. But no, the pressure of a man does get to you, and sometimes it gets to you in a way that it prevents like the best options for you. Because I'll give an example where me and my wife got married at like 23 or whatever, and we had our own apartments and everything, and it was kind of a struggle because the first apartment we lived in, it was good, but then I got another job where I made slightly more. And because I got that job, I made too much to stay in that cheap apartment. So I had to get something a little bit more expensive. And I found like my credit card bills were going like way up. Like it was like hard to afford things.
You went through your midlife crisis on it.
Exactly. So it was like one of those things where it's like, I didn't want to do it like, because initially my mom offered, hey, do you want to stay with us for a little bit, to save money, just so like I wouldn't have to, pay like the rent bill, where I could just save up a little bit. But it's just one of those things where it's like, I'm married, I'm 25 years old at the time. It's like, I don't want to move back into my mom's basement or whatever with my wife. It's like, how does that look? But it's...
Hey, that's me right now.
But it could have been helpful to your point.
No. But at the end of the day, like, it's one of those things where it kind of got to a bad point where I end up swallowing my pride and like living with them for like a few years before like we purchased the house that we're in now. But it's one of those things where it benefited me. Like I was able to afford, like, because I was saving so much money, I was able to eventually afford that down payment on the house. And the only thing that prevented me from it was like a sense of pride in what being a man is.
Yeah.
So,
No, I agree. I mean, that's essentially what we're doing now. I mean, if y'all don't know that, we're in the basement of my father and mother-in-law's house, right? Beautiful, right? Now, we rented this out for the purpose of, living here for, 2-3 years until we have that down payment. And I remember my father talking to me. He's like, Marcus, you should get a house. And it wasn't more towards like, oh, because you're a man, you shouldn't leave. But, is a bit of that, but also like, hey, you should buy the house and don't rent, right? Don't rent. And then, I look at the market today, and I look back at my situation when taxes hit, which, we run a business, and you don't get your taxes taken out. And I don't know what happened with the presidency, or I don't know what happened, right? But taxes were a huge hit, I think, last year. And I was like, man, if I got a house and I had a mortgage to pay, it would have been much tougher in that situation. Still be able to get it done, but it would just have been a lot of stress, a lot of work. And so, yeah, no, I agree. And that's why you swallow the pride. You're like, listen, I know what's going to happen. We're going to get a home. We're not going to rent from an apartment in the future, but that takes a little bit of sacrifice, and we're doing that sacrifice now,
yeah.
I'll kind of get my approach on it as a 18-year-old. So, I'm 18. I'm living in my parents' house right now, and I'm a full-time college student, and I have a full-time job. So I would say I have a bigger responsibility than most 18-year-olds my age.
That's good. Yeah.
So it's something I've definitely learned. If there's any younger audience, there's definitely stuff that I've had to learn how to control. And time, how we were talking about, is one of the biggest things. I have girlfriends. I have no time to do a girlfriend. I tried, failed in 2 weeks. So it's time managing is everything. I'm my job is kind of I kind of come in whenever I want. It's more get things done. So it's not time hours, right? So I'm I can be in work from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. at night. Never know. So it's I never really get time to do anything. My parents always say, "Oh, you don't do this." And sometimes it hurts me because I work too much. Or I don't get my college done, or I don't get my assignments done, and now I'm behind assignments. And now I think stacking on top of it. Yeah, I got to start chat GPTing it.
Now they can find out.
It gets rough, but it's it's definitely something where I'm learning. I don't know, you have been pouring into me throughout this year that I've kind of I've been here for 2 years, so good year. I've built relationships with you guys, so it's something I've definitely been learning, and it's I can see in you guys, how successful you guys are, and it's it's something I'm learning, but I feel like I'm going in the right direction, So,
oh yeah,
No, for sure.
it's
and I think the big premise is are you trying, right? And to this point where are you still keeping the margin,
Yep.
are you at least trying to do what you can, right? And that doesn't have to look like deleting the Crunchyroll subscriptions or the Netflix.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to look all that. Now you can, right? Now, okay, that's cool, but it's not what's needed, right?
Yeah.
And when you look back at your life, are you gonna be like, man,
It's not always needed.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
not always
yeah,
needed,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so I think in a sense for you, Mark, I think, you're on the right track. There's a lot of people who get out of high school, and, they don't know what to do or don't do anything. So I think the better question is not where you live, but are you trying, what are your goals for the future? You'll be okay, well, I live with my mom now, but I'm working hard. I'm working 40 hours a week, or I'm striving to do what I can to make enough money to move out. It's on the short term to save up, but I'm at least trying and doing what I can. Better than that stereotype, which, I'm living at my mom's basement and not doing anything, right? And I think that's a better,
Yeah.
You got a plan.
Yeah, we have a plan.
I feel like that's kind of a masculine, kind of you say a masculine trait, you kind of put it in there. in those terms a little bit.
What?
Where like you're like, you know, pushing, you know, you're kind of pursuing something,
Yeah.
You're
right?
pushing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, each one of us, I feel like, is pursuing something, right? So it's like,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can say in terms of that.
But yeah, I think just to close it out, man, you know, God made us a certain way as far as like masculinity and stuff, and we stick to it. Do what we need to do, keep it pushing,
Yep.
and give glory to God.
Amen.